Good morning, one and all. This is Dr. Diana. Welcome to session 27 on modern software engineering. And we have looked into units 2, 3, 4, and 5, and we have completed revision of those topics. I thought we can run through a little bit of unit 1 also. Now, unit 1 is a very basic introduction to what is agility, why do we go into agile, and we are going to introduce some of the agile concepts, and all of these are very basics. Once you have done with unit 2, 3, and 4 and 5, this might sound very simple, and this gives us the reason why we are going in for agility, and it also shows that agile development methodologies are more efficient than the traditional development strategies. And we will also understand that agility is not a process or a protocol, but a mindset. As we go into this, as we start with, we will think about what are the methods available for agile development, how is extreme programming working and its life cycle, that how we build the team, how we adapt its concepts, and how do we practice extreme programming. Then we move on into how we can make our mindset or change our perspective or thinking into agile using strategies such as pair programming, energized work, informative workspaces, root cause analysis, and retrospectives. All of these are strategies that can help us change our mindset from the traditional software development process into the agile process. As we move into, we are going to think of why we need agility or what is agility. Agility means to adapt to something. It is working differently. It is not essentially working faster, but it is working differently. And when you work differently, you produce an efficiency not only in terms of speed or the delivery, but also in terms of value of the software that you developed. Now, will agile development help us become more successful? Agility is now adopted by most of the companies. When you see Google, Amazon, all of these companies try to come up with or enforce agile environments. Are they really successful? And how do we define success? In order to do that, we must first gain an understanding of what success means. In the traditional development process, the success of a software is delivery on time, on budget, and according to the specification that we made before we started developing. And this was considered to be success. Now, when we look into what actual success is, this can be thought of as a three element structure. This triune structure has got an organizational success, a personal success, and a technical success. Each of these contribute to the success of the project. Now, when we deliver on time, on budget, and according to the specification, we might have received organizational success, or more in terms, it's only the technical success that is met. If we meet the profit criteria, then we might have met the organization success as well. But there is also another component, which is the personal success. Unless this personal success is achieved, it is very difficult to achieve the entire efficiency of the team. Even if you have the best coders in hand and if you have the best designers in hand, They are not going to be productive unless there is personal success also. So that is the main idea behind agile development. So agile development focuses on achieving a wholesome success in all three aspects: the personal, technical, and organizational aspect of success. When we talk about success in all these areas, we can see that the employee volunteers to work, and the work they produce is more efficient, and they consume less time to give the best output. So this can be achieved only through an agile working environment. And agility in how and what is it means to be agile. What does it mean to be agile? The answer is more complicated than you might think. The agile development isn't a specific process you can follow. No team practices the agile method. There is no such thing. Agile development is a philosophy, it's a way of thinking about software development. The canonical description of this way of thinking is the Agile Manifesto, a collection of four values. Agile environment need not be in software development alone. In our workplaces, we can eh, come up with an agile environment. Agility helps us to be more productive, and it is not essentially lenience or negligence in work. It is about how you remodel your work and become more productive. And you allow the employee to give the best of themselves for the company. When we look into agility, it means to adapt. The word agility means becoming more adaptable. How can I make my software development more adaptable is my question. Now, the Agile Manifesto or the values behind agility help us become more adaptive. This is the Agile Manifesto, and it is written by those people who have come up with the Agile strategy of software development as given by them. They have written out a letter called the Agile Manifesto, where they have written as we are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others to do it. Through this work, we have come to value four important principles or four value systems they have introduced inside the software development environment. And they are: the first one is individuals and interactions over processes and tools. What does that mean? In the traditional environment, we always give more of importance to the process that we follow and the tools that we use. Because the tool can do this, I am doing this. Because the tool cannot do this process, I can't achieve that process. And when I talk about process, I say I do this step first, I do this step next, and then move on into another step. And I can't change that process even if I see it is not effective. But in agile development, we give more importance to the individual and to the interaction between multiple individuals. So I'm not going to take a mail, draft it, and then put into all the fancy technical terms and mail it to the other person asking them to develop some bit of the module. Rather, I go directly to the person, tell them this is what I want. It saves time, it gives more clarity, and it becomes more productive. The second value is working software over comprehensive documentation, which means you give importance to development of code than the documentation. Documentation is required, and only when is required you do the documentation. Otherwise, forget about documentation and write your code. The third one is customer collaboration over contract negotiation. This is very, very contradictory from the traditional approach. In the traditional approach, we sit down with the customer, talk about a budget and a deadline or a time period within which we complete our software development, and we try to stick on to the time so that we deliver the software on time and unmindful of how much inefficient the software is. If it meets the basic specification document, then I've done my part, is what the traditional approach makes us think. But in agile development, we are going to involve the customer from day one. We are going to keep showing them what we are progressing with, and we are not going to negotiate on the cost. So it is not about the cost, but about the efficiency of the software. And this also means that it is going to be a bit expensive than the traditional development methodology, in which the deadline might not be met on time because we are concentrating on the efficiency of the software. The customer must be able to understand this before they opt for our way of engaging with the software development. The next last value is responding to change over following a plan. In the traditional methodology, we see that we plan in advance and we always try hard and push the team hard to stick on to the plan. If at all you want to make any changes to the plan, and if you are unable to stick on to the plan, it costs you heavily, which means we are not able to adapt to any change in situation with the delivery of the software. That is the very major change in agile development methodology. Here we talk and concentrate on how to respond to the changing situation, or we make preparations in advance so that the impact of the change is less in the way we develop the software. Now, to achieve these four value systems in the software development environment, we concentrate it or break it down to 10 principles. These principles help us to choose our decision of what to do next in every step of the development process. These are the principles. The first one says our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. So, we are going to satisfy the customer, and that is our primary objective. We do that by giving them bits and pieces of deliverables continuously over a period of time until completion. And the second principle says we are supposed to welcome changing requirements even later in the development phase. Agile processes harness change for the customer's competitive advantage. Imagine you've got a software development and you started with development after receiving all the requirements from the client place. In the traditional approach, you will freeze on the customer's requirement, call it the customer requirement specification document SRS, and this requirement specification document uh, cannot be modified after we start our plan. So the requirement is freezed, and then we start with the design phase, and then we move on into development and delivery. At the time of delivery, if the customer wants, and imagine there is a huge market change within that development period, and the customer needs a change, it becomes very, very hectic for the programmer to accommodate the change, and most often it incurs a lot of cost. In agile development, we concentrate on the fact that we will be able to expect the changes, and the way in which we develop provides room for adaptability or adding more features later in the development. Because of this aspect, even if the client comes up with a requirement in the last phase, the Agile development team will be able to accommodate that requirement and to deliver a wonderful software to the client. The third principle states deliver working software frequently, from a couple of weeks to a couple of months, with preference to shorter time scale. So we are going to fix on some time scale. It can be either 2 weeks or 2 months. The shorter, the better. So in extreme programming environment, it is fixed as 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, we are going to deliver something to the client. And when we start working, we always plan only for those 2 weeks and plan for the next delivery. So our long-term goal is broken down into short-term goals, and we start delivering every 2 weeks. This not only helps the team to perform better, but it also uh, gives a wonderful view for the customer and helps them trust the programmer better, which also leads into a perspective where they do not think about the budget of the software but the efficiency. The next principle is business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. In agile development, we make sure that the stakeholder is involved in the development. In traditional methods, because the customer is kept outside the development platform, they never seem to understand what is failing in the software until the last minute. To avoid this, to keep validating the process, the development or the code, you always involve the customer in Agile's methodology. That helps you keep track of what is important and what you are developing, what might be required in the future. The fifth principle states build projects around motivated individuals, give them the environment and support their need, and trust them to get the job done. So, when you have a motivated person, pull that motivation in during development. Do not demotivate employees because you have a deadline. It might sound difficult, but on the long run, towards the completion of your project, you will see that it is fruitful to allow the employee to get the job done by himself, and it gives a boost to their motivation rather than pushing things on them. So they naturally volunteer themselves to work on things. And the sixth principle states the most efficient and effective method of conveying information to and within a development team is face to face conversation. In the traditional development methodology, we always try to excessively document, and then, if any work is to be done, we have to mail. Only then the other team will start responding. For the words that you ask, they are not supposed to respond. That's how the traditional development methodology is tuned. And people spend a lot of time typing in their mails, explaining the requirement they have, and most of the time they are unable to communicate their expectations clearly through mail, and they end up developing software with a lot of errors when they try to integrate. To avoid this, XP encourages the use of face-to-face communication over documentation and mailing system. The seventh principle is working software is the primary measure of progress. So we are not going to make a progress report based on the number of lines of code that we develop, but on the measure of the working software. If that feature works, then it is counted in. Even if it has only 2 lines of code, you count it in as a big achievement if you have completed that particular feature. The eighth principle states agile processes promote sustainable development. The sponsors, developers, and the users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. So there is a cycle of development. You ask requirements from the client, then you start planning, designing, and you develop, and you again give it back to the client, take your feedback, start working again, deliver back to the client. So this works in a cycle, and this cycle should work in a very constant pace. It should not, the value or the speed should not imbalance. Only then your agile development will be effective. The ninth principle states continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. As you keep moving on towards the client, you every time you get back to the client, you are receiving some feedback, then you're working back on your code to improve it. Every time you cause an improvement in the code, it not only gives you a better output, but it also makes your code easier for you to do progress the next time. The 10th principle says simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work done, not done, is essential. So, when we talk about simplicity, we say we are maximizing the amount of work not done. So we concentrate on the most important aspect, work only on it. You don't try to pull all the other things and then complicate stuff. You move one step at a time. The other step you push aside and you do not touch on the next module until you have brought this into shape. This is very, very essential, because we are, once we start developing, we are tempted to work on everything. But in agility, you stop from that process. You do everything little by little. That's called as the incremental design approach. The 11th principle says the best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self-organizing team. And this is very important with the success management that we spoke earlier. So if you have a personal success element in your team, the team organizes themselves voluntarily to come up with the best they can do. So every time the team contributes their best, you come up with the best architecture, the best designs, and everything that is best, because the team wants to work voluntarily. The last principle and the 12th principle is at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. And as we see that the team structure is very important in agility, it was always encouraged in agile development that this team comes together and they reflect on what they have done, how they have done it, if they have had a milestone, how did they overcome it, if they had some success, share and celebrate the success, and if you are unable to recover from something, take ideas from every member of the team, then adjust your environment and progress. So a progress line is brought as a team. This is the most important aspect of agile development. It helps the team become more efficient and productive over a period of time. Now we understand that agility is not just a process or a protocol, it is a philosophy. It is a way in which you think of your software development. And we will look into some other aspects of agile development, and we will see how extreme programming works in the next session. For now, this is Dr. Diana signing off. Thank you. Meet you in the next session.